All right, everybody. Today I am in Chongqing, China, and actually I ran out of topics to talk about. But since I'm in a very vibrant city of Chongqing, I think I need to talk about something like the three major expenses of the life, right? Like how do you actually get rich, manage the cost, and don't go out of budget? I think there are three most important spendings in your life, and there will be housing, renovation, and wedding. All right. So usually, this three comes in a package one, right? Because all these are big ticket items, at least five figures for some of you. So if you make the wrong move and you don't manage your costs, it will actually derail your financial independence, retire early plans. Which is why I'm very cautious of my spending on these three things, right? Your housing, your renovation, and your wedding. And let's take a deeper dive, right? Within these three cost big ticket items, right? How can you actually manage it? And how did I manage it? And I'll start the first one, housing, in the next destination. Let's go. All right, so the first big ticket item I'm going to talk about is housing because everyone needs a roof over their heads. And even if you're renting, but when you're considering to settle down for your later part of your life, with your significant other or trying to build a family, it's very important to consider housing. And in Singapore, we have like three main options when we want to talk about housing, right? It's like HDB flats, private condominiums, or landed property. Usually, landed property is out of reach to many people because they are passed down by generational wealth. So let's talk about public housing. All right. So I think a lot of my audience will be in the public housing sector, not by the choice, but it's because of the income requirements as well as the heavy capital needed. So in essence, if your housing move is really wrong from the start, it will cripple your financial independence. Why do I say that? Is because if you choose between BTO or resale flat, right? VTO has a huge subsidy built to order. Government has heavily subsidized public housing, whereas resale flat, you're buying from the open market, you are paying market price, right? Whatever determines the demand and the supply of the market, you are paying that, which is why we have a lot of $1 million flat nowadays, like record-breaking transactions. And if you set your goals too high, you want everything to be perfect location, high floor, near to your parents, with good amenities. Ultimately, you have to pay for the price, all right? That is just natural selection, which you have to be acceptable of when you are buying your first public housing flat. So especially for young adults, fresh graduates, when your income is not that high, it's really recommended that you and your partner sit together and discuss your housing plans. And most likely, the most advantageous and cost advantage to you will be a BTO, built to order flat, because you guys have the time and the years to wait. Usually it takes like 3 to 4 years, but nowadays we have some early advanced release flats where it could go as fast as 2.5 years already. Unlike mine was delayed by COVID for an additional year, so it was like 5 years construction. So if you apply BTO now, with much more supply from the HDB releasing every year, right? I think you are in a better position than I was 5 to 6 years ago when applying for my flat. Of course, you cannot compare the housing price pre-COVID versus now because both inflation and housing demand and supply has gone through the roof. So we gotta be very reasonable in our expectations on what we get. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that if you can afford to wait, always get a BTO flat first because they are brand new. They are in very good housing estates and they have relatively good amenities that the HDB will develop over time in your estate, especially in the new estates like Tengah, or even if you look at the most recent new estate, Bidadari. 10 years ago, really nobody talked about it, but 10 years later, it went to the moon. But of course, if you're stepping into your early 30s and you're trying to build a family, you cannot wait anymore because the biological time on women is not on their side to bear any children. So yes, you gotta be fast, and resale flat will be your next good option. All right, so the waiting time is much lesser, maybe 3 to 6 months. You could get your flats already. But of course, you have to pay a market premium on that because you're paying market price, and maybe there's also like COV, cash over valuation, that you have to pay. And also one thing about BTO flats is that your combined income cannot exceed $14,000. Then for executive condominiums, it cannot exceed $16,000 or you're not eligible to apply. So for those of you who have income above these levels, you are in a very awkward state, right? You have sufficiently high income as a family, but you can't really afford private condominiums. Or even if you could afford, you have to stretch your dollars. Like you need to scream and save because it's like not too much and not too little. You are just in this twilight state. So as always, my advice for housing is that if you don't have a big hit, Don't go and wear a big hat. Okay, just buy what you can afford within your capability. Of course, you may say that your income may grow over time, which is true, but some people just overestimate their capabilities and what the market could demand their skills for. So if you're wondering where I am, there is an indoor aquarium in the shopping mall of Xinguang 68 Plaza in Chongqing. All right, so they built this aquarium. I remember Singapore used to have one of them in one of the shopping mall, right? But I guess the cost for maintaining a saltwater aquarium is really a lot, really a lot. All right, I can tell you, even if you do a small tank, a small fish tank of salt water, it can cost you maintenance of $1,000 per month already. Which brings me back to this topic on housing, right? If your house is really expensive to maintain, then you are not able to afford it. You will have very high stress paying your bills, your mortgage, your property taxes, and whatever you need to maintain your house, just like a saltwater fish aquarium. All right, so choose your housing very carefully. On your income level, make sure it is what you can afford within a few years' time. Don't overstretch your budget, because once you overstretch your budget, you don't have extra for anything else, for future financial planning, future holidays like this. You won't even think of it. You will just think of paying your bills, because that's important for your survival. All right. And yes, Chongqing is very hot in the daytime, especially in June. That's why I have to film indoors. Okay, so if you want to support the channel, you can go and click on my interactive brokers link or scan the IBKR QR code right here. Okay, it will support the channel financially without any obligation. All right, and let's head on to our next destination. All right, second part of this video, let's talk about marriage and wedding, because I know that a lot of newlyweds are really planning for their wedding, and you know it's one of the biggest expense of their lives. People want to make it as grand as possible. Some people want it as simple as possible, but sometimes you will realize that it's not up to your decision, it's up to the elders' decision, and that could be the parents or the grandparents or your grandparents-in-law or your parents-in-law. All right, all these are not really up to you, despite how free we want it to be. And this time round, I am in Chongqing Sancheng Budao, Sancheng Xiak. It's a small hilly and mountainous area with commercial shops, old ancient buildings, and you can see all this architecture all around. And what I want to tell you is that all these are traditional old buildings, which also means if you want to relate it, it's your old traditional customs that some of you want to do away with. Should you stick to the tradition, or should you just go with the new norms? All right, that is a question of itself. Okay, I can't really advise for you, but I think more and more elders and parents, they are more accepting of new norms. Like we used to give bride dowry, right, in the old times. Nowadays, some people still practice it, some people don't. So it's really up to you and how you negotiate with your prospective future in-laws. But if you were to ask me what is my perspective point of view about spending on a wedding, I felt that really essentially if both of you can agree on just registration of marriage, ROM, the cert is only like $40+, get your marriage certified by law, that is enough. Now, there are other things like the wedding banquet, the wedding photo shoot, photography, videography, and whatnot. Okay, all these are really just add-on items. Okay, of course, you need to have the wedding bands. Okay, that one is the important one. Engagement ring, just go and get the lab-grown diamond. All right, during my time back then, lab-grown diamonds are still not very popular, and now that lab-grown diamonds are more acceptable to many, right? You can get a bigger size, a better cut. You don't have to like go for naturally made diamonds, which are really very unethical if you've watched blood diamonds before. So that is one thing on the engagement ring. Just get a lab-grown diamond. I'm pretty sure most of you cannot tell by the eye anyway. Okay, and I'm very sure your prospective spouse, wife-to-be, will be very happy that you save more money than you spend more money. Okay, for new age women. And then the next thing is wedding photography, right? Wedding photography, there are so many packages, and usually there's an upsell element. So what I really urge some of you to do is to just go across the causeway to Malaysia, look at their wedding packages. They'll be much more competitive because labor is cheaper, transport is cheaper, cost of supplies are cheaper. Okay, wedding photography, you take anywhere, it all depends on your scenery. And sometimes it's really focused on the person rather than the scenery. Like everyone is just taking their photos in Singapore, and sometimes they go Taiwan and get upsell by the wedding photography packages in Taiwan, which is just quite sad lah. And anyway, the truth is that most of our wedding photography after your wedding, you will just put it under your bed or in cold storage, and you will never see the daylight again. So really just spend on the essential photography and the actual day photography of the wedding dinner or ROM ceremony if you like. Okay, all the rest are really just add-on items. Not that they are not essential, but it's something that can be done on a smaller scale or on a lesser scale. But having said that, right, let's talk about the most important thing, which is wedding banquet. How much should you spend on a wedding banquet? Because you would realize that most people, they are doing bigger and bigger wedding banquets, sometimes not by their own choice, but by their parents' choice. So this one ultimately have to see both sides of parents, how do they agree on setting up the tables, how many tables, and how many guests are you inviting, and which kind of hotel are you going for, or even restaurants. So all this is highly debatable, and I'm not in position to really advise you which one is right or which one is wrong. But for my own, I did it at a 4-star hotel, although it is not like very upscale, but it is sufficient, right, for my small size of less than 10 tables. Okay, I think everyone had a good time. I also enjoyed my wedding banquet, gather everyone around to witness the event. So you may not like the cost idea, but it is a vibe, like those that really can make it, they will take every effort to come for your event. And those that cannot make it, then maybe they will at least like send you their well wishes, which is very heartwarming that you should experience, though not at the expense of other people's budget. Do not like force people to give you ang pao just to cover your budget. I think that is very important. Choose where you can afford without any ang paos, right? I think we should not have the mindset that having your guests to cover your weddings, that is just a very old traditional mindset that we should not have it in the new 21st century. So I really feel that don't expect your guests to cover your wedding venue. All right, you should be the one covering it, and anything on top is a bonus. And so far, we covered about engagement ring, wedding bands, wedding banquet, wedding photography. All right, is there anything else? I think is the 过大礼 thing, right? 过大礼 really depends. I'm not in position because this one, every Chinese has their different custom. I mean, their different 籍贯 has different customs. So just follow which one your wife or your husband follows. And please don't be the cuckoo who spend like 6 figures on a wedding, because it is just a show thing for everyone to see. Nobody really cares. Like I always say, right? Nobody cares about your opinion, and nobody really cares for your event. They come here is really on their well wishes. Like they spend the time, they spend the money to come here, okay? They are not here to really sponsor your wedding. Just like my video is also not sponsored, which is why to support you can click on the interactive brokers link, like I always say. But the truth is that having guests to sponsor your wedding is a very bad and poor mindset. Alright, please don't have that mentality. So once you realize that you don't need to spend a lot on your wedding, you can go and save your money on other things like your housing and your renovation, which we will cover next, and I'll see you in the next destination. Alright, let's talk about number 3. Renovation, which is another big ticket expense item that may derail your financial independence retire early plan. And the reason why I want to talk about renovation is because I completed my renovation like last year in November, right? So it is very clear in my mind. And if you're wondering where am I right now, this is one of the shopping malls, and I show you something. You look at this dinosaur skeleton, and then there is like a cloud forest, just like Gardens by the Bay. They had some pots here, and yes, it's like an artificial man-made landscape between a shopping mall. Yes, very magnificent image right here in shopping mall. That's how Chongqing does it, right? Chongqing is like this mega tech cyberpunk city with very crazy malls and all that stuff, right? So yes, I want to talk about renovation, right? Because people are spending way too much money on renovation. I talked about one of my earlier videos talking about people are normalizing $100,000, 6 figures renovation, which I feel that it may not be your priority at this point in life, because many of you, you're just getting your new flats. This may be your first home. Why are you spending so much? And some of you may justify that you are in it for a long time. Like you will be staying here for 10, 20 years. But let me assure you that once your income goes up, you'll want something better. Okay? You may not figure it out now, but as your income level rises and you prefer to have a more private space, a more serene environment, and maybe a more atas kind of lifestyle. Not that it is bad or something that is shameful, but it's just that different people have different aspirations towards life. Some of you may not aspire to upgrade to a private property. Some of you may be very happy with HDB, which is perfectly fine. But for the rest of us, or people who just want to do the property investing or property stacking, or move up the asset progression ladder, right? To use property to build your net worth, and then like in your later part of your life, retirement, you downgrade to a smaller property. I think this is all very viable methods of building your wealth. Just that property has a very huge capital upfront, and people are really like, talking about how you should not over leverage in your condo, your private property, which is true. which is fairly true. And before I derail into a property topic, let me come back to renovation, right? The thing about HDB renovation is that we rarely like stay in a forever home nowadays. And that's because people all want new stuff, like they want new flats, brand new 99, which is what a BTO is for. But once you will like, move up, like I said, on income, on aspirations, would you still want to stay in your BTO? Or you may have very difficult neighbors, people throwing rubbish anyhow, and your rubbish chute, or you have very noisy neighbors with babies and children making like very loud noises disturbing your weekends or rest. Would you want to move out or not? I cannot answer for you. Your answer is probably yes. And for those of you who are lucky enough to have very good, perfect neighbors, good on you, okay? You probably don't need to move. But the fact is that many of us do, okay? And there are more people who wants to move or need to move than people who don't need to move. And you see, if you spend so much on renovation, it's going to eat up, okay? Renovation is an expense. Renovation is not an investment, okay? No matter how good renovations you do, it's just going to get hacked away by the next owner, okay? No one is going to tell you that your renovation will increase the home value, okay? It is not like a landed property where, your build-up area, your whatever renovation does add the property value for a landed. Not so much for apartment like HDB or, private condo. So please stop fantasizing about your 100,000 six-figure renovation because nobody really cares, okay? You are the one who's staying in it. Okay, you happy is your problem. But the fact is that no one else really cares about how good your renovation is. Everyone just need a nice, peaceful environment to go home to. And that's how I spend my money on renovation. I spend like 35,000 max all in, all right? Including built-in features, furniture, things that you cannot move around, all right? All this all in 35K, including electricity and aircon. Okay, I know some people, they just exclude electricity and aircon out of their renovation budget. I don't know why. Anything that you cannot take away should be part of your renovation budget because all these are just expenses that cannot be moved. So yeah, don't over budget or reno. Start small and then slowly build things. Okay, most importantly, build up your kitchen and your toilets, your wet areas, because these two will have a lot of built-in features and fittings that cannot be moved. Yeah, so be very careful on your renovation. Don't overspend and over budget. Then if you were to ask me, ID versus direct contractor or subcontractor, which one is the way to go? It all depends on what is your priority, right? If you want to spend less time on renovation, then you got to go the ID route. But ultimately, that will cost more because they are more like a project manager assisting you with some designs. And you see, a lot of people with no qualification, they become ID, right? And it's something that is very easy to pick up over the years. Like even for myself, my few months of experience, I think I can manage already, okay? But if you are not into this kind of thing, if project management is not your thing, you really don't like to manage schedules, manage people, manage work progress, then project managing is not for you. Then you probably want to leave it to a main contractor or interior designer, but that all comes with cost. And for myself, I am the main contractor. I do my own project management. I find my own subcontractors and direct contractors, and that takes up a lot of time on top of my YouTube job and business. Yes, but the good thing is that I'm very flexible with my time. Okay, I can like take offs and just catch up with my work at night. That may not be true for some of you. So renovation is a very important thing that, stop normalizing $100,000 renovations because all these things are just expense. They are not assets. They are not investments. They will not add your home value or your net worth or build your wealth. At most, it is just a vanity metrics. Anything that is clean, that is easy to maintain, and, just have a comfortable feeling is good enough. The less things you have at your home, the less things you need to be responsible for, and the less things you need to clean. Okay, because if you were to ask me to choose between a very expensive renovation versus a more expensive property due to its location and its size, I'd rather take the later, right? I'd rather spend more money on the property itself, the asset itself, than on the renovation, which is the expense. This is why a lot of people's priority are reversed, They focus on getting a lower value flat, but spending a lot on renovation, which is totally unnecessary. But having said that, I think this may still offend some people that, they really like the renovation, which is really your own business, right? Your money, you just spend whatever you're happy on. Some people just like to spend on renovation, which is good. But some people spend on luxury items like handbags. Okay, who's to say they are right or wrong? Everyone has their own indulgences, and your indulgence may be on your renovation. And some people just like to spend on private property. No one is really right or wrong. I may be wrong also. I'm an idiot anyway, which is why I always say, right, nobody cares lah. Even if I say that one should not spend on it. You should not care about my opinion, because my opinion may offend a lot of people who are spending a lot of money on this. Yeah, so really, that's all I want to say about renovation. If you really want to save money, you go the direct route. If you have some time to spare, yes, manage it, but it is very difficult and it may be a drag on top of your original work schedule, which is what I have faced. Okay, but if you ask me, I did everything from zero, from scratch. It is still manageable if you have some project management skills and you're okay to manage people. Okay, but some people really cannot manage people one. So they just throw everything to ID, but you have to pay the cost. That's all I have to say about renovation, and then I'll see you on my next destination. Alright, we are back at Jiefangbai, Chongqing. I forgot to mention this location. This is Jiefangbai walking slash commercial slash shopping street. So there are a bunch of shopping streets around in different China cities. And the way I want to end this video is that I want you to be very careful about this, because I've managed this very well because I do my research, alright, which you should do also. Because if you don't do your research, you're just gonna get derailed all your financial plans. Like before I got married and got my housing, right? People keep asking me, what about your housing? What about your marriage? What about your renovation? And I'm glad that I kept all these costs manageable. I won't say like super low, but manageable. So that, my financial plans will never derail, even though I top up my CPF and all that. Yeah. So it is really very important for you to look into this. I hope this has given you some insights, and my channel did deep dive into some of these few topics so really stay tuned, and if you want to look at what are my best ways to at least pay and manage your card spending, right, then at least refer to my credit card strategy video, which you could check it out right here.